Hi, I'm Zafira. I came home from a double shift, bone-tired, only to find my kids' room stripped bare, every blanket, every toy, shoved into the basement like we were stray dogs. My own mother looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's where you belong," or "Get out," just so her golden granddaughter could have the perfect room. I stayed silent that night, but what I did next made them drop to their knees and beg for mercy. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are, and where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. I promise, you're going to want to hear this. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were stiff from gripping the steering wheel for too many hours. 14 hours in the ER will do that to you. The rain had been steady all afternoon, the kind that clings to the windshield no matter how fast the wipers move. I'd promised Eli and Maren hot cocoa tonight. It was the one thing keeping me going during the last chaotic hours of my shift, imagining them in their pajamas, hands wrapped around warm mugs, marshmallows melting on top. I grabbed my bag, shut the car door with my hip, and noticed the front door wasn't fully closed. That was odd. We always kept it locked, habit in this neighborhood. As I stepped onto the porch, a faint scent of my sister's perfume drifted out. She hadn't lived here for years, and even when she visited, she never came over unannounced. My stomach tightened, but I told myself maybe Mom had invited her for dinner. Inside, the house was unusually quiet. No cartoons on the TV, no thump of little feet running to greet me. I set my keys on the counter and called out, "Eli? Maren?" Silence. I walked down the hallway toward their room, already reaching for the light switch. The moment the door swung open, my breath caught. The walls were bare, the shelves empty, the twin beds I'd saved months to buy gone. The small reading lamp in the corner was missing. It looked like no child had ever lived there. A low hum came from below, somewhere in the basement. The kind of sound an old humidifier makes. My pulse was in my ears. Footsteps behind me. I turned, and there was my mother, arms folded, her face as unreadable as ever. "It's where you belong, or get out," she said, her voice flat, almost bored. I blinked, unsure I'd heard her right. "What are you talking about?" She didn't flinch. "The girls need a proper room. My granddaughter," she meant my sister's little girl, "is starting school next month. She deserves the space. Your two can manage downstairs. It'll build character." Before I could respond, Eli appeared in the hallway, his hair sticking up from sleep, eyes wide. He clung to my leg like he used to when he was a toddler. Maren, still in her mismatched socks, peeked around my hip. "Mommy, where are our stuffed animals?" she asked, voice trembling. I knelt down, kissed the top of her head, and kept my voice steady. "They're safe. Don't worry, baby." I followed the sound to the basement door, flipping the switch at the top of the stairs. The yellow light revealed trash bags piled against the wall. The kids' mattresses leaned in the corner, blankets half falling from them. The air was damp, smelling faintly of mildew. This was no place for anyone to sleep, let alone children. I ran my fingers over the top of one bag, feeling the shape of Eli's favorite action figure under the plastic. My jaw tightened. My mother's voice floated down the stairs. "You should be grateful I even let you stay here. Plenty of single mothers don't have a roof over their heads." I didn't answer. Not to her. Not now. Eli's small hand slipped into mine. Maren sniffled quietly. I squeezed their hands, then led them upstairs, past my mother without a word. In our room, my room now I supposed, I pulled out the suitcases from under the bed. Each zipper sounded louder than it should have. I began folding clothes, placing the kids' belongings neatly inside. Every movement was deliberate. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, not from calm, but from resolve. They thought they were just rearranging rooms. They didn't realize they had redrawn the lines of our lives. That's when I realized this wasn't just about losing a room. This was about losing our place in their world. I didn't bother turning on the basement light again. It was still warm from earlier, casting that tired yellow glow over the concrete floor. Eli and Maren were already curling up on the pile of folded blankets I'd spread out. The space felt even smaller now that I was kneeling in it. The ceiling seemed lower, the air heavier. I tucked the edges of a fleece throw around Maren, trying to make it feel like more than it was. She coughed, a quick, sharp sound that made me clench my jaw. I brushed her hair back and forced a smile. "This won't be forever. You hear me?" Eli's eyes searched my face, as if testing whether I believed my own words. "How long is forever?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "Not long enough to matter." They didn't need to see the crack in my voice, so I straightened and told them I'd be right back with an extra blanket. My mother had stacks of them in the linen closet. I knew exactly where to look. On my way up the stairs, I heard voices, light, high-pitched laughter drifting from the far end of the hall. My sister's voice, unmistakable. I slowed, drawn toward it. The door to the old guest room was wide open. It was no guest room anymore. White curtains with embroidered stars hung neatly over the window. Fairy lights twinkled along the walls. A canopy bed sat in the corner, covered in a quilt so new it still had the folds from packaging. A small desk, painted pink, had art supplies laid out like a display. My niece was spinning in the middle of the room, holding a stuffed unicorn nearly her size. My sister was laughing with her, and my mother stood nearby, beaming. "She finally has the space she deserves," my mother said, her voice dripping with approval. "Poor Zephyra's kids are adaptable." All three of them laughed at that. I stayed in the hallway just long enough to memorize the picture, their glowing faces in a room that had once stored my kids' winter clothes. Then I turned away before they noticed me. On the walk back to the basement, my mind pulled me somewhere I didn't want to go. Years ago, when my parents were days away from losing this house, I'd emptied my savings account to cover half the down payment. I was fresh off my divorce, barely scraping by, but I did it because I thought this would be our family's anchor, our forever home. I never imagined that forever would have such selective rules. Back in the basement, Maren had drifted off, her hand resting on Eli's arm. Eli sat up when I came in, holding out his favorite blanket. "So you don't get cold too, Mom," he whispered. I took it, and for a second I couldn't speak. I just ruffled his hair and said, "Thanks, buddy. You're the best." Once they were asleep, I stayed sitting against the wall, listening to the hum of the old pipes. My eyes adjusted to the dimness. The trash bags in the corner looked less like storage and more like a reminder. Nothing here was ours, not really. I pulled the bags toward me, opening one just enough to see what was inside. I began sorting, creating two piles, what we would need soon, and what I would take when we left for good. Every small movement felt like I was already taking back control, one item at a time. Around midnight, I slid into the chair at the small desk shoved under the stairs. I reached for my old leather planner, the one I'd kept since my nursing school days. The pages were worn soft, the pen loop stretched out. I didn't write down complaints. I didn't write about what they'd done. I started a list, short, clear, and in order. Step 1 was clear. Get proof. And I knew exactly where to start. I woke before the kids, the air in the basement still heavy with the scent of concrete and the faint detergent smell from the folded blankets. Eli's arm was draped protectively over Maren, both of them breathing slow, the kind of sleep that comes after a day of holding everything in. I eased myself up, careful not to jostle them, and climbed the stairs one step at a time. The house was still. Not even the faint creak of the water heater. I moved through the kitchen in stocking feet, filling the coffee pot, listening for the smallest sound above me. I didn't want to cross paths with my mother just yet, not before I was ready. The plan had started forming the moment I wrote it down last night. Proof. If I could get it in my hands, no one could twist the story to suit themselves. and I knew where the oldest, most forgotten things in this house were kept. Mug in hand, I made my way to the narrow hallway by the linen closet. The attic ladder pulled down with a groan that felt too loud in the quiet. I froze for a second, holding my breath, then climbed up into the dim, warm air above. The smell of cedar from an old hope chest mixed with the dry dust that settled over everything up here. Sunlight filtered through a small, grimy window, casting long lines across the rows of cardboard boxes. They were stacked in neat columns, my mother's idea of order, each labeled with her sharp handwriting: Christmas 2003, linens, photo albums. I worked quickly, shifting boxes, following the vague memory of where I'd last seen the old filing box. It was buried under a stack of folded quilts, the kind she used to keep in the guest room closet. When I pulled it out, the chill of metal bit at my hands. The latch clicked open, and there it was, layer after layer of paper, smelling faintly of old ink and time, receipts, mortgage payment slips. And then, my breath caught, an agreement with my signature in blue ink, dated nearly 8 years ago. The amount stared back at me, $42,000, paid in full from my savings account just weeks after my divorce was finalized. I sat back on my heels, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. The memory came back sharp. My mother sitting at the kitchen table, tears streaming down her face, thanking me over and over. "This house will always be your safe place," she'd said. I'd believed her. Tucked in a side pocket of the box was an envelope, the paper yellowed at the edges. My father's handwriting covered the front in looping script. Inside was a short letter, almost casual in tone, but one sentence stopped me cold. "Zephyra is the rightful co-owner of this home, and I trust she will be treated as such." I didn't waste a second. I pulled my phone from my pocket, snapping clear, close-up photos of every page, every signature. I sent them straight to my private cloud, then to Dana, my oldest friend, the one person I trusted without hesitation. If anything happened to these papers, there would be copies somewhere my family couldn't touch. I was just sliding the documents back into the box when the sound of footsteps drifted up from below. My mother's voice followed, soft and lilting in a way she rarely used. "Eli, Marin, come up, sweethearts. I made pancakes." My pulse kicked hard. She never cooked breakfast for my kids. Ever. That meant she wanted something. I closed the box, shoved it back under the quilts, and climbed down the ladder with my coffee mug in hand. She was standing at the base of the stairs, her expression all warmth and smiles. "Oh, good morning," she said. "Been up long?" I forced a light laugh. "Just organizing some old holiday stuff in the attic." "Thought I'd get a head start before the day got busy." Her eyes lingered on me a little too long before she turned toward the kitchen. But if she was sugar-sweet now, it meant she wanted something, and I was about to find out what. And she was already at the stove when I stepped into the kitchen, a thin cloud of steam curling from the griddle. Pancakes. Golden, perfectly round, the kind she used to make on birthdays when I was little. "Morning, sweetheart," she said without looking up, flipping one with a practiced wrist. "I thought the kids might like something warm before school." Her voice was honeyed, her smile ready when she finally turned. If I hadn't known her all my life, I might have believed it was real. "Thanks," I said evenly, setting my mug on the counter. Eli shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, and Marin followed, hair wild from sleep. She fussed over them like she'd been doing it every day, pulling out plates, pouring juice, asking about their favorite toppings. I leaned against the counter, watching. This wasn't just breakfast. This was staging. Once the kids had food in front of them, she poured herself coffee and sat across from me, folding her hands on the table like we were about to have a friendly chat. "You know," she began, "I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a fresh start. Keep the family close." There it was, the opening. She smiled at Marin, then back to me. You and the kids could move into that smaller room upstairs. Cozier, easier to keep warm, and, she gave a quick shrug, since times are tough, maybe you could help out a little. Just a small rent, nothing unreasonable. My fingers tightened around my mug. She let the pause hang just long enough before adding, almost casually, and you could watch your sister's little girl a few days a week. Daycare's so expensive, and you're already here. The fork in my hand might as well have been a matchstick. Every nerve in my body remembered the years I'd spent on her couch, bottle-feeding my niece while my own kids ate dinner alone in their rooms. The job interviews I'd canceled because someone just needed me for a few hours, the birthdays I'd missed for somebody else's emergency. I took a slow breath. It sounds like you've thought this through. Her smile widened, pleased with herself. I just want us all to help each other. You know, family. I nodded once. Then let's put it in writing. That way, everything's clear. The flicker in her eyes was quick, but I caught it. She didn't expect that. Oh, well, we don't need to make it formal. I'd feel better if we did, I cut in softly. For everyone's sake. She hesitated, then gave a small laugh, like I'd just been overly cautious. All right, if it makes you comfortable. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and she excused herself, stepping into the hallway. I focused on cutting Marin's pancake, but my ears stayed sharp. Hey, her voice dropped. I talked to her. Looks like we'll get free help again. You can bring the baby over next week. A muffled laugh from the other end. My sister. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. She thought I'd just sign my life over again. By the time she came back, I had smoothed my expression into something neutral. She carried on like nothing had been said, pouring more coffee, asking Eli about school. When breakfast ended, Eli glanced up at me as we cleared the table. Are we moving upstairs, Mom? I ruffled his hair, my voice steady. We might be moving, buddy, just not the way they think. As step 2 was about to begin, and it meant going into enemy territory. 2 mornings later, I parked my old sedan right across from the Main Street Bank. The air had that crisp, late-morning bite, the kind that made you tuck your chin into your collar. I sat there for a moment, watching people come and go, farmers in ball caps, retirees with their checkbooks, the same small-town faces I'd grown up around. It looked harmless from the outside. Inside was where the real story lived. I pushed open the glass door, greeted by the faint smell of coffee and the squeak of polished floors. Behind the counter, Mr. Halverson looked up from his desk. His hair had gone grayer since the last time I saw him, but his smile was the same, steady, polite. Well, if it isn't Zephira, he said, standing to shake my hand. It's been a long time. I still remember when your father brought you in to open your first account. I managed a polite smile. Life's taken a few turns since then. We made small talk as he walked me to his office, a glass-walled space that still had the same dark wood desk and little jar of peppermints I remembered. Once I handed over my ID, he tapped into the system and pulled up the file on the house. It took everything in me to sit still as he slid the folder across the desk. The pages smelled faintly of paper and ink, nothing remarkable, but every line was a piece of my history. And there it was, my $42,000 down payment, documented in black and white. My name on the early drafts of the ownership records, right alongside my mother's. Proof I'd been part of that house from the start, even if they'd tried to scrub me out later. I kept my voice even. Can I take a closer look? Of course, he said, leaning back to give me space. Halfway through the stack, my eyes caught something I hadn't expected, statements from a joint savings account I thought had been closed years ago. My name was still on it, but the balance was nowhere near what it should have been. Several large withdrawals over the past year, each one signed electronically. Not by me. I felt the air shift in the room. Odd, I murmured. I didn't know this account was still active. He hesitated, then said, "Well, according to our records, your sister came in last year to update contact information. She had all the right paperwork. I assumed you knew." My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression calm. "I see. She'd had help. Someone had let her in. And in our family, someone usually meant Mom." I took a slow breath, closed the file, and smiled politely. "I'd like certified copies of all these documents. How long will that take?" 2 days, he said. "We'll have them sealed and ready. Would you like us to mail them?" "No," I said quickly. "I'll pick them up in person." I slid a few bills across the desk to cover the fee. "Cash is fine, right?" He nodded, tucking the money away. No receipt, no paper trail, just the way I wanted it. When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, the sun felt sharper. I crossed the street to the library, the red brick building with tall windows that had been my refuge in high school. Inside, the air was cool and quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the copy machine. I scanned every page I'd been able to borrow, loading the files onto a flash drive I'd brought from home. Then I pulled out my phone and called Dana. "You're live," she said as soon as she picked up. "I've got proof," I whispered, glancing around. "Not just of my ownership, there's missing money, big chunks, and they used my name to get to it." Her voice dropped. "That's theft, Z. You could nail them for that." "I'm not rushing," I said. "We're doing this right. I'm sending you encrypted copies. Keep them off the cloud." "Got it." By the time I walked out of the library, my steps felt lighter. I had more than just a claim now. I had leverage. I slid into my car, resting my hands on the steering wheel for a moment. This was no longer just about a house. It was about every time they'd counted on me to stay quiet. But before I could act, the fight came to my doorstep, literally. It was late afternoon when I pulled into the driveway, still carrying the faint scent of the bank's copy room on my coat. The sun was low enough to cast long, gold-tinged shadows across the yard. That's when I saw her, my mother, standing on the porch like she owned the place, arms crossed, a manila envelope clutched in one hand. I didn't even make it up the steps before she spoke. "We can do this the easy way, Zephra, or we can do it the hard way." Her voice was calm, but it was the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "What's in the envelope?" I asked, my tone matching hers. "A legal notice," she said, drawing out the words like she was savoring them. "You have 72 hours to vacate this property, signed by the county clerk." She gave a little shake of her hand so the envelope rustled. I took it, feeling the weight, too light to be anything official, and slid the papers out. One glance told me everything. Wrong seal, font too large, county name spelled with an extra E, the kind of sloppiness you only see when someone's trying to fake authority. "This is interesting," I said, scanning the page. "Nothing to think about," she replied quickly. "It's time to grow up, stop freeloading, and let the real owners handle this house." Before I could answer, she pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. "Let's loop in your sister so she can hear this too." Seconds later, her voice came through the speaker, loud and smug. "I told you, Z. This isn't your home anymore. You've been coasting long enough." From inside the house, I heard small footsteps. Eli appeared at the doorway, his brow furrowed. "Mom, are we moving again?" That question went straight through me. I crouched down so I was eye level with him. "No, sweetheart. We're not going anywhere." I kept my voice steady, even though my hands wanted to curl into fists. "Zephira," my sister cut in, "you're dragging this out for no reason. Just leave before it gets ugly." I stood up slowly, looked at both of them, one in person, one glowing on the phone screen, and let a smile creep in. "Thanks for bringing this in person," I said evenly. "I'll have my attorney review it first thing in the morning." That was when my mother's expression faltered, just for a second. She hadn't expected me to have a counter ready. "You don't need an attorney," my sister snapped through the speaker. "I think I do," I replied, tucking the papers neatly back into the envelope. And while we're at it, maybe the county clerk would like to see this interesting document. Neither of them had a response to that. My mother muttered something under her breath, turned, and walked down the steps. The phone call ended without a goodbye. Once the porch was quiet again, I went inside and closed the door. The kids had retreated to their rooms, but the air still felt heavy from what they'd overheard. I set the envelope on the kitchen table, pulled out my phone, and called Dana. "Sending you some photos," I said. "Tell me what you see." A minute later, her laugh crackled through the line. "Oh, this is bad for them. That's not even close to a legal notice. You could call it harassment, maybe even intimidation." "Good," I said. "Because I've got more. The bank records, proof they touched money that wasn't theirs. You're sitting on a goldmine of leverage, Z. We play this right, and they won't see it coming." I looked at the envelope again, the fake seal like a cheap costume trying to pass as the real thing. For the first time in a long while, I felt the balance tilt in my favor. I wasn't just going to hold my ground, I was going to hit back, and hard. That is, the first strike would have to be public and perfectly timed. 2 days later, the community center's parking lot was already half full when I pulled in. The autumn air had that crisp bite to it, and my breath showed in thin clouds as I stepped out, clutching the leather folder against my chest. Inside were neatly stacked copies of bank statements, certified mortgage records, and the photograph I'd taken of the forged eviction notice. Dana was waiting near the side entrance, blending in with the cluster of people smoking and chatting before the meeting. She caught my eye and gave a small nod, steady, not overdone, just enough to say, "I'm here." The meeting was in full swing by the time we took our seats. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, the faint smell of coffee lingering from the refreshment table. The HOA chair, Mr. Phillips, droned through the usual agenda, landscaping updates, parking complaints, until he reached community concerns. I stood up, smoothing my coat before speaking. "I have something I need to bring to everyone's attention. It's about misuse of property rights and fraudulent documentation." The words landed like a pebble in a still pond. A few heads turned. Mr. Redding, 2 rows up, folded his arms. Mrs. Alvarez leaned forward in her seat. I walked toward the front table and set my folder down, flipping it open with care. "This," I said, holding up the eviction notice, "was delivered to my home 2 days ago. Can anyone here confirm this is a legitimate county seal?" I passed it to the chairperson. He adjusted his glasses, frowned, and shook his head. "No, this isn't right. Wrong seal entirely." A low murmur rippled through the room. I let it hang for a moment before laying the notice flat on the table. It was presented as official, and it came from my own family. I could feel the shift, people remembering the gossip, the freeloader label, the sideways glances over the years. "That's not all," I continued, pulling out the mortgage documents. "This is the purchase record for my home, notarized and filed. My name is on every page. I didn't squat. I bought that house outright." Mrs. Alvarez glanced at Mr. Redding, and he gave the smallest nod. A few others leaned back, arms uncrossing, as if reconsidering what they thought they knew. That's when the door swung open. My mother strode in, my sister right behind her. Both looked like they'd been rushing, coats half-buttoned, hair wind-blown. "Don't listen to her," my sister blurted before she'd even reached the seats. "She's lying, making herself look like a victim." I didn't flinch. "You're welcome to speak during your turn," I said evenly, then looked back to the chair. "I'll be submitting the full file to your office tomorrow for review. If the county clerk wants it too, I'm happy to provide it." "That's not necessary," my mother snapped, but her voice had that edge, too quick, too sharp. I gathered my papers slowly, meeting her eyes just long enough to make the point. "And if anyone here would like to see the rest of the transactions, they're time-stamped and notarized." For a moment, the room went quiet except for the faint shuffle of papers. Mr. Phillips cleared his throat. "Thank you, Ms. Blake. We'll make sure this is noted in the record." I stepped back toward my seat. Dana didn't smile. She just gave a small, approving glance. The kind that says, "You landed it." My mother and sister didn't stay long. They left in a swirl of perfume and muttered complaints, their heels clicking sharply on the tile. Neighbors leaned in to whisper as they passed. By the time the meeting adjourned, I could feel the current shifting. People I'd known for years but never truly spoken to gave me small nods, even a quiet "good night" here and there. It wasn't victory, not yet. But it was the first real crack in the wall they'd built around me. But my sister wasn't about to let the tide turn without a fight. I didn't even need to open my eyes to know something was wrong. My phone was buzzing non-stop on the nightstand, the kind of rapid-fire vibration that means trouble. I fumbled for it, blinking against the early light slipping through the blinds, and saw the flood of notifications: Facebook, local community groups, even old high school acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in decades. I opened one, and there it was, my sister's name, bold at the top of a long, carefully crafted post. She'd written a whole saga about me. "She's been living off my parents for years," it began. "We took her in when she had nothing, and this is how she thanks us, spreading lies to make herself look like a victim." She'd even dug up old photos from a decade ago, back when I was barely scraping by, when I'd been working 2 part-time jobs and couldn't afford new clothes for the kids. One picture showed the kids sitting on the floor of our old rental with mismatched furniture in the background. Her caption, "This is how she raised them, like squatters. And she says she's the one helping us?" My stomach turned, but not from shame, from anger. I could see the comment threads already splitting in two. Some people jumped in to defend me. "This doesn't sound like her at all." Others joined the pile-on. "Wow, if that's true, that's disgusting." I scrolled further and saw my mother chiming in under the post. "It breaks my heart as a mother, but she's been ungrateful since she was a teenager. We gave her everything." It wasn't just strangers. Names I recognized, old neighbors, former co-workers, were chiming in, half of them swallowing her story whole, the other half hesitant, confused, but already infected by doubt. I didn't hear Eli come into the room until he spoke. "Mom, why is Aunt Rhea saying we lived like squatters? That we were just freeloading?" He stood there in the doorway, hair still mussed from sleep, his phone in hand. His voice was sharp, more angry than hurt. Maren, on the other hand, trailed in behind him with tears pooling in her eyes. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Did we really live like that?" I put my phone down and pulled them both close. "No. What she's doing is twisting the truth to make herself look better. And this is the last time anyone is going to speak about you like that without answering for it." Eli pulled back first, his jaw tight. "Then do something. Don't just let her talk like that." "Oh, I will," I said, smoothing Maren's hair. "But we're going to do it the right way." After they left the room, I sat on the edge of my bed, letting the hum of the phone continue. It was like a swarm of gnats. You want to swat them away, but the smarter move is to watch where they're coming from. I dialed Dana. She picked up on the second ring. "I saw it," she said without me even saying hello. "And she's stupid for posting it. Screenshots, Zeph. Every comment, every share, the timing's perfect, right after the meeting." "This isn't just petty, it's textbook defamation." "I was thinking the same thing," I said, pacing toward the kitchen. "If I hit back now, they'll start deleting things. But if I give it a day—" "Exactly. Let her dig her own hole," Dana said. "The more she posts, the better your case." I ended the call and set my coffee to brew. The smell of it filled the room, grounding me. Then I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and labeled it in big, clean letters. Evidence. One by one, I pulled each post into that folder. Screenshots of her captions, threads where my mother chimed in, shares from neighbors, even the private messages that had started to trickle in, some supportive, some ugly. By mid-morning, I had over 40 images saved. By late afternoon, the folder had doubled. I wasn't just collecting their words, I was building my own arsenal. And I wasn't going to waste a single piece of it. And by the end of the week, I had a stack of proof that could bury them, or save them, depending on what I chose to do. Saturday came with an edge in the air, not from the weather, but from the knowledge that this was it. The quarterly HOA and township meeting was open to the public, and word had already spread. People would be there who had read every one of my sister's posts, nodded along to my mother's comments, and whispered their judgments in grocery store aisles. I didn't bother with anything flashy. A navy blazer, slacks, low heels, hair pulled back so nothing distracted from my face. Dana pulled into my driveway right on time, her car spotless as always. She gave me one sharp look when I stepped outside, then nodded. "Keep your voice calm, your back straight, and your pace slow," she said. "You're not there to beg. You're there to file facts." The community hall was buzzing when we arrived, that low, restless hum of people who had already picked sides but wanted to see a fight. Eli and Marin were in the back row, just like we'd planned. I caught Eli's small nod and Marin's half smile before focusing on the front. When the HOA chair called for new business, I stood. "Thank you for your time," I began, my voice steady. "I have supplementary evidence for the record regarding property rights, falsified documents, and harassment." The clerk motioned me forward, and I handed over the first set, certified mortgage statements and payment records. "These show full ownership of my home in my name alone, with every payment made directly from my account," I said, clear enough for the people in the back to hear. A few heads turned. Someone in the second row frowned. Next came the eviction notice. I placed it beside an actual HOA form, sliding them toward the clerk so the seal and signature were visible. "This," I said, tapping the fake, "is what was left taped to my door. And this," I tapped the real one, "is a legitimate HOA notice. Different seal, different signature. This is not an HOA action. This is forgery." That earned a murmur, low, uncomfortable. I let it sit for a breath before producing the flash drive. This contains screenshots of every post made about me by my mother and sister, along with timestamps showing they were posted within hours of my speaking here at the last meeting. The content is defamatory and directly related to my prior statements before this board. The room stilled. Even the shuffle of papers stopped. I could feel my mother's glare boring into the side of my face before she spoke. "This is ridiculous." The HOA chair raised a hand. "Ma'am, you will be silent unless recognized." Rhea wasn't as restrained. "She's lying." Enough," the chair cut in, sharper this time. "These materials will be entered into the record and reviewed by counsel." I turned, not to the board, but to the rows of faces that had watched this unfold. "I'm not here for pity. I'm here for truth. And now you have it." Silence followed me back to my seat. It wasn't the cold, judging kind from weeks ago. This was different. Heavy, weighted, thoughtful. When the meeting adjourned, people approached me. Some apologized outright. Others just looked me in the eye, a quiet acknowledgement that they'd been wrong. I didn't need more than that. Outside, Eli and Marin were waiting. Eli grinned like he'd been holding it in for hours, and Marin hugged me so tightly I had to laugh. We walked toward Dana's car, passing my mother and sister in the parking lot. Neither spoke. Neither did I. I'd spent enough of my life giving them my time, my energy, and my silence. This time, the silence was mine to keep.